Hello, Anthony here, outside of our normal schedule and beyond the normal bounds of time and space. You know, July. We're trying something new this summer, ladling a little bit of extra gravy onto your off-season mashed potatoes. But don't worry, it's mushroom. What a joy for us all. We're producing a series of interviews with some folks we feel are on the forefront of modern horror. We'll be discussing how their work is reshaping and, in some ways, redefining the horror genre across different styles and mediums. Now, this project would not be possible without the support of our patrons on Patreon, so if you are one, thank you. And if you aren't, I'd consider becoming one. I mean, of course I would. You'll get access to an ad-free RSS, bonus stories, and a full behind-the-scenes discussion for every episode we release. But for now, please enjoy Alexander and Jacob's chat with the King of Chitin, the Sultan of Slime, the Commander-in-Chief of Scum Gland and Beef, Trevor Henderson, monster artist.
Hello, I'm Jacob Duarte Spiel.
And I'm Alexander Saxton.
And we're 2/3 of Wrong Station. Anthony couldn't be here today. He's getting more teeth put into his head at the
Getting
dentist.
them all put in there.
They're
They're hammering him
more. And from that delightful little chuckle, you can hear that we have with us in the studio, in the mind studio, in the chamber of the dreamscape of the mind octagon. We have the creator of such obscenities as Sirenhead, Cartoon Cat, and Longhorse, the podcast Mayfair Watcher Society, and a new book of middle grade spooky tales called Scare Waves. It's Trevor Henderson, monster impresario. Trevor, how you doing?
I'm good. Hello. I've never been described as a monster impresario before. That's great. And also, I really like referring to Sirenhead as an obscenity. That's great.
That's yeah. I think that's accurate.
Very happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Have you seen what Sirenhead looks like? He looks like an obscenity. I'm sorry to say.
He's very wet, Trevor. Trevor, when you were did you ever think of giving him a towel to, towel some of that off?
There's wet varieties and there's dried out, dehydrated varieties. You get all sorts.
This is actually a question that I've had for a while. Do you think monsters shower?
I mean that totally depends on cognizance levels of any one particular monster. But generally, no, I don't think so.
Generally, no. Are there any monsters who want to shower but won't be let into places that have plumbing?
I think that all monsters would probably, in the end, appreciate a shower. They'd feel better, but they wouldn't understand what was happening. They'd be like a cat, like an angry cat, lashing out. So it's not worth it in the end for anybody. But I think that if they could open their heart, they would learn to enjoy a hot shower.
So, Trevor, for listeners who, this is an audio medium, we're describing your work, which is purely visual. How would you describe your work for people who haven't seen it before?
Yeah, it's kind of double faceted, where I work in digital, with my tablet doing digital paintings. Usually, I do a lot of horror book novel covers and posters, like that kind of thing. But I think what I've kind of become known for in the last 3 or 4 years is taking photos, what the kids would call liminal these days, and usually stuff I take myself or donated from people online, and then kind of painting in monsters into these kind of mundane urban or suburban environments, and then kind of just trying to color match them as best as possible to give kind of an uncanny feel. I don't know what you'd even call that. I guess like spooky photo bashing or like ghost photos, something like that. But that's kind of what I'm best known for, is drawing weird online monsters that become popular and then putting them in photos of your bedroom.
And so what would be the prototypical Trevor Henderson monster? What are the hallmarks? What are the visual signifiers?
Oh man, it's every artist, especially concept artists and people who are doing creatures, have the things that they get hung up on. And I do a lot of like really elongated, emaciated looking things. I think that something's scarier if it looks unwell or sick. Even over being like hostile or with murderous intent or whatever. So I do a lot of like, really showing ribs through paper skin kind of thing. And then lots of teeth and human teeth, like the flat ones. And molars, just
Technical term, sorry.
all molars and yeah, incisors and no eyes. Just I don't really have a. I think there's like four eyes throughout every monster I've ever drawn altogether. And then usually just kind of juxtaposing that with very like the kinds of environments and buildings and spaces you see every single day on your daily travels, and just kind of trying to use the frisson between those two things to give kind of a cool effect, I guess.
It's sort of the experience of like when you're a kid and you look down the stairs to your
Yeah,
basement maybe, and or you're climbing up the stairwell at your apartment building, and you can't totally see around the corner, and there could be
yeah,
something there, but there probably isn't, right?
exactly. And I think the most successful pieces I've done really lean into it being more subtle and kind of hiding a lot of that. And it's a tightrope to walk between showing off a painting or a character design, and then wanting to be scarier because it's in the shadows and it's leaving it up to interpretation a little more.
Could I go back? You said something interesting where you said that
Yeah,
this is what you've become known for over the past 4 years.
yeah.
What were you doing before that? What was the
Um,
sort of lead into this kind of work?
I was before that, I guess I was learning to use my tablet at the time, while working retail and just trying out. It was still drawing monsters. I've just been drawing monsters since I was like 6,
Mhm.
and I imagine I will do that until I die. Um, but just a lot of movie fan art. I'm obviously a big horror movie fan, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. Um, and just trying out different things online and then seeing if anything kind of like got a reaction. And yeah, and then I did a full painting. The first thing I did was a full painting of what I wanted to do was a moment from a found footage horror movie that didn't exist.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
that was the most popular thing I'd done at the time up until that point. So then that kind of snowballed until eventually it was using real photos and became the kind of thing I'm doing now. But before that, like I said, I was a lot of fan art, and just like weird sketches of monsters, but purely digital, I guess.
So when you're designing monsters and you talk about how much you're revealing to the viewer,
Yeah.
um, in your mind, do you have the whole anatomy of the thing sketched out for yourself, and then you're just sort of moving the shadow up? Is it mysterious
No,
even to you?
it's I've never done a sketch beforehand, or even in the process of doing one of those photo based ones. I always will just draw flat onto the photo with no idea of what I'm gonna really draw, aside from a
Hmm.
really very vague idea, and then it kind of forms as I'm doing it.
Hmm.
Um, and then I just try and make it as detailed as I possibly can, and make sure everything matches up in terms of lighting and color and texture and all that. And then at the end, I'll walk it back and play with transparency and put in the shadows and really like push it further away.
Hmm.
Um, so there's lots of them where it'll be like something that's really obscured or blurred or indistinct because of the motion of the camera, supposedly. And but it's only after the fact that I've done this, after like doing a really detailed painting, I guess.
And then
Just
when you come back to characters multiple times, sort of new aspects of them are revealed to you until
yeah,
the creature is sort of like this amalgamation, is sort of this emergent thing.
yeah, absolutely. And there's a real like audience response level to that
Mm.
too, where like a certain piece will, for instance, become more popular. Or a certain drawing of a character will become more popular than the other ones. That'll become like the mode of that character going forward, I guess. And then you can kind of patch together like it's like many different people encountering like a monster in the wild over a course of like years.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And then if you laid those all out, you can kind of put together what it would look like, I guess, is kind of how
Uh-huh.
I work, if that makes any sense.
Oh, that's really
Totally.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Sirenhead, for instance, which is by far the most popular thing somehow I've ever made. It just that guy's really changed a little bit over the years in terms of scale. When I first did it, when I first drew the character, sorry, it was in, three or four different photos with a little flavor text and stuff like I do. And it wasn't for a couple of years till the character caught on. And at that point, when it caught on and started kind of weirdly going viral, it was massively taller. It was like almost kaiju sized. So
Hmm.
like I kind of like found a nice happy middle ground there where it ended up being a lot bigger than I initially envisioned it, but not to the point where it's Godzilla sized, because that's not scary at all to me.
Hmm.
But like I said, it's totally shaped by the response and the audience.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
and is there a monster that you felt was going to have a bigger response than it actually got, or was there one that you wish had gotten a bigger response than it actually got?
Um, well, it's really unpredictable. I've never like
Mhm.
sat down and tried to do one that I'm like, this one's gonna blow up because I think that's folly, especially with the internet. There's no
Yes.
proving.
Mhm.
There's no, if you set out to make something viral, it will have the stink of it on it and it will never ever, it'll sink like a stone in
Mhm.
my experience. Um, I and it's also weird because like, a lot of times, most times with characters and like properties like this that get really popular, there's like a movie or a book or something backing it up. And these guys kind of just are they're just drawings, like they're OCs basically online that have somehow become popular in a way that still mystifies me. So it's all extra super unpredictable. But I guess to answer your question, I really like these characters I made, I think, fairly recently. So they might still catch on even more, called the Sisters of the Ever Sharpening Blade, that are kind of
Mhm.
like my Cenobite surrogates a little bit.
Uh-huh.
They're like these weird Victorian ladies with covered veil faces that are like a interdimensional knife worship, blade worshiping cult. Their head is like a mass of blades underneath. Um,
Oh, it's yeah, these are good.
Thank you. Yeah, I like them, and they've gotten a great response. But like, I really want to do like I want to do something substantial with all my characters. I just haven't really had the time. Like, I want to do like I want to write the Sirenhead book. I want to do something with Longhorse. I want to like actually give them like a house to live in the form of a story. I just have not yet. And I think I have a really good idea for those ladies in particular, and I think that I there'd be a really cool, fun period set horror story in the like the epistolary style, like
Yeah,
Oh yeah, perfect.
that'd be
yeah,
great.
yeah, done through like
Gothic. Yeah.
yeah, goth, exactly, you get it, exactly. So yeah, I'd like to see those ladies get more of their due even.
Well,
Well,
if you ever have a
I
short story that
Yeah,
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 um,
please.
performed.
yeah,
Also,
yeah,
I didn't
absolutely.
know that the Sisters of the Ever Sharpening Blade were yours. I just they're
Oh,
sort of
really?
existed in like a cloud of horrible things from the internet that are sort of
Yeah.
rustling around in the dark spaces in my brain,
Oh,
and and,
cool.
and it makes them less scary to know where they came from.
I know.
So I appreciate that.
I'm sorry I took that from you. I love that they were just like a thing. That's kind of the goal is it's like a double-sided blade where like that's kind of the goal, but also like
Mhm.
it is also mine and don't do horrible things to my babies at the same time. And it's the internet, so it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had there was one that I saw recently when I was doing some additional research because I know your work, but I wanted to like really know it, and I came
Yeah.
across the singing clergyman.
Oh God, I love that thing. And
Yeah, that thing's very good.
I think it's such a cool idea, and I have ideas for it, but I have again, it's something I haven't had the time to sit down and do like a whole narrative for. But I love that one because I love monsters that are not like you can kind of see them having another purpose besides just killing people.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
when you design a monster just to kind of like hunt down people and kill them, it's very clear that there was no thought having them having an outside life, when the viewer isn't looking at them. And I
Hmm.
really like monsters, and I try really hard to make this something that you can think about. My creatures and monsters that I make up is that they have like a whole thing that they have going on aside from torturing and killing you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's cool.
so has a sort of philosophy of the monstrous emerged out of the work that you've been doing? Is there
Yeah.
something that unites all of these creatures in
Um,
your head?
I mean, a lot of it is just like the kind of aesthetic choices that'll pop up over and over again with the same artist, like we were talking about with
Mhm.
a lot of mouths, a lot of teeth, and a lot of elongated limbs and that kind of thing. But I guess I have like a design ethos or a design idea for doing monsters where I try and make them at least a little bit silly. I've spoken about this in the
Mhm.
past. I feel like that if a monster isn't at least a little bit in danger of being taken as completely ridiculous, then you get too far towards the monster just being cool. And if a
Okay.
monster is cool, it's never scary. It can be threatening or dangerous, but it's not frightening. So
Mhm.
you need to have something be kind of ludicrous if you ever want to reach for something being like actually scary, I think.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
that makes any sense at all. Like, the cool elements of a monster, like for me, are like spikes and wings and like big sharp teeth, and those all feel dangerous. Like a tiger would be dangerous, but
Hmm.
they're not scary to me like something that looks sad when it's coming at you, or like perplexed, or has certain characteristics that are, befuddling or ridiculous or funny. Um, I
Hmm.
guess that's my main guiding principle, or try
That's
to
really
do so.
interesting. Is there a monster that you can like that people might know from a movie, for example, like
Yeah.
that you feel exemplifies that idea? I'm thinking like immediately I'm thinking of, the Cenobites who look kind of silly, like they're all draped in leather. They
Yeah.
often have like really weird piercings or like very odd like lips and eyes.
The Cenobites are a great example, not for even looking ridiculous to me, because I do think they look cool, but it
Yeah.
goes in the opposite direction because they they've all done it to themselves. It's all
Mm,
they've changed their form themselves. So it's like, what are they gonna do to you, right? It's not even you being frightened of them killing you. It's what other things can they do? Um,
hmm.
but for what I was talking about in terms of something kind of being silly, there's certain elements in the Pennywise design from the It
Yes.
films that I think are really successful. It leans a little bit too heavily for me into the big sharp teeth thing,
Hmm.
and kind of like running right at the camera and doing the whole jittery thing. But I really like how he has like wall eyes that go in either direction, and like just stuff that's strange. Like
Hmm.
strange
Hmm.
choices are cool. I like whenever I see little things like that in a monster, just like eccentricities, I guess.
I'm thinking about Gary Oldman in Bram Stoker's Dracula with his sort
Yeah,
of beehive hairdo and how much more frightening he is than any
yeah,
vampire in any other piece of literature.
yeah. It's super silly, but like it's iconic, and you remember it, and it works, and it just gives him this extra lived in aspect that he wouldn't have
Hmm.
had otherwise, you know?
So is that related to monsters having another function beyond hunting and
Yeah,
killing you? Uh,
absolutely.
and sort of hinting at this broader world, this broader reality that they inhabit with its own alien sensibilities.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like if a monster has like an interiority, or like has
Mhm.
its own kind of thing happening, especially if it's like baffling or like beyond your understanding because they're from somewhere else, that's so much weirder and scarier and just inherently uncanny and off-putting than if it was basically the equivalent of like a grizzly bear but weird looking,
Mhm.
you know?
That's so
Yeah.
interesting because when we look at monsters, especially let's use like Alien as an example,
Yeah.
the xenomorph, like when we look at a monster like that, usually these monsters are created in order to offer a specific sort of antagonism that matches a psychological like the psychological drama that's happening in the film.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh
absolutely.
and so something like Alien, is people have pointed out that it's a metaphor for sexual assault because you've got
Yeah.
this like it's a metaphor for disease. It's all these different metaphors.
Yeah.
Or we could talk about the Fly
Yeah.
in David Cronenberg's The Fly. Jeff Goldblum's transformation is representative. A lot of people point out of things like HIV/AIDS and
Yep. Yeah.
cancer and disease as it moves through the body. Um, and these are very specific. But then you see, what will happen is when these movies catch on, there's an expansion of the universe when the sequels come
Yeah.
out, and
Yeah.
suddenly the monster has this interiority because you know what it is. Like the Aliens is all about, you know, while it is also about the psychology of the character because it's about motherhood and it's about the alien having a mom and the
Yeah.
mom wanting to take care of its babies and then Ripley's defending a child, but like it
Yeah.
also is providing that same psychological depth to the monster itself.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. I'd never thought about it in those terms, but yeah, like as these films expand, they're not just exploring new ideas for the characters, they're exploring new ideas and
Yeah.
interiority specifically for the monsters.
I'm so happy you brought up the xenomorph, because A, it's probably the best creature design ever, ever.
Yeah.
And and it's really interesting that you brought up how it relates to the themes in both movies, because I feel like in the first one it has that kind of strange inner world that you're not privy to. Like the whole thing with the xenomorph and alien is that it's it moves so strangely in this almost languid way, and you can never really tell what it's going to do, and it's almost like every time it's on screen, you see it in such a way that it's almost hard to parse what you're looking at. It's like this great unknowable thing.
Hmm.
Giger intentionally removed the eyes because he felt it was less knowable if it was just this blank slate. And then I feel like in Aliens, it had, like you said, such great themes about motherhood and kind of making a parallel for Ripley and Newt with the alien queen and the drones, that you remove a little bit of that interior world that the monster in the first film had, where it's less known, and turn it into more of a hive in order to fit the theme of motherhood. So it's all about repurposing for
Hmm.
whatever you're saying in each film, I guess. But that's really cool how, like, I felt like, yeah, like I said in the first one, it's like this unknowable thing that was kind of retrofitted with themes for the second one when James
Yeah.
Cameron came.
Hmm.
It's really cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I had a question. You got body horror, you got serial killers, torture porn, existential dread, psychodrama. These are all
Yeah,
shared, these are aspects of the horror genre. And then you gravitate towards monsters.
yeah,
And you were saying earlier you've been drawing them since you were in '06, and I think everybody has a phase where they try and draw monsters, but this has become an avenue that you see yourself in, maybe. What is it that keeps bringing you back to monsters
yeah.
specifically?
I just think they're the best thing in the world. I mean, like, there's nothing better than monsters. I mean, I like a lot of those subgenres you mentioned. I really like to different degrees. Body horror is really high up, but torture porn's kind of way down at the bottom. But monsters are always so fascinating. I mean, like, it's just there's so much you can do with it. It can fulfill so many different roles and ideas in a story. It can be, you can see yourself in the monster as the outsider. You can do so much with the monster, on a deeper level, even from just the surface, which is that the surface is that monsters are the best thing, and
They're dope. Yeah,
every
they kick
every story
ass.
is better if it's the monsters. They kick ass. My answer is that monsters kick ass, and I like they're the best. Yeah.
So if you were able to adapt your monsters and give your monsters the life that you want, I'm thinking about sort of the foremost like propagate or the foremost booster of the monster in our culture right now, I think, is probably Guillermo del Toro.
Oh yeah,
He,
he
he
is.
has like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
very particular like pro monster agenda that he's pushing to the point
Yes.
where like the monsters are I think always the protagonists of his films, or at least the moral center of his
I
films.
think the only exception is the Pale Man and
Yeah, I was gonna
Pan.
say Pan's Labyrinth.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
but
but
otherwise, yeah,
but like the fawn is
yeah, yeah.
in that film the moral center of it. If you were adapting your work, is that the kind of approach you would take with your monsters, or
I,
are they more purely monsters, more in the xenomorph line in your mind, in your heart?
it definitely depends on the monster and the context and the story that I'd be telling, because there are definitely, even from just like the roster of ones I put online and drawn, there are ones that definitely have that interior life and sentience and cognizance and things they want outside of that. And then there are other ones that would definitely be more to fulfill a role in a story, to represent different themes, or just even to be like the big scary monster that chases someone down and eats them. Because all those things are fun in different ways. But if I was going to do something that was like a bigger project, like say a Del Toro kind of thing, I would
Mhm.
definitely want to, definitely the more interesting avenue is something that has an interior life and an ecosystem it's from, or somewhere it's from that is being interrupted. I feel like a lot of the monsters I draw are equally as confused as maybe the people encountering them.
Mhm.
Maybe things that are stuck or stranded. I think that's really interesting.
What do you think about when you're considering a new design? Is there a thought process that you return to?
Yeah, I mean, there's things that I get hung up on, and I definitely have to like try and vary some design choices, while also keeping it something that I find interesting or scary. There's some stuff I just won't incorporate into a monster design because I don't think it's very, fun. Like, tentacles or something that I generally don't
Interesting.
really have because I don't think that that's scary. When
They're
in
pretty
fact
played
they
out.
are. They're played out a little bit, and I'm sure there are a lot of ways to do it in a way that isn't played out, but it just I don't have that. I haven't hit that yet. I don't know. I haven't got there yet. But when I'm starting a design, I just will usually have one thing that I want to express, or it could be as simple as like, what if there was a guy but his head was on upside down or whatever, uh, and then just go from there and kind of feel out the rest of it from there. And then usually once I've done the whole design, then I'll come up with the backstory at the end to kind of like retrofit why this thing is here and what it's doing and why it's in this photo or drawing or whatever, what have you.
That's such an interesting process because I find that when we write episodes of Wrong Station, for me at
Yeah,
least, I'll often start with an image will
yeah,
come to mind or a kind of person will come to mind
yeah,
and everything kind of grows out from there. But it's almost as if it doesn't matter where that initial spark comes from. Everything just kind of grows out from that point. And if this point that I'm imagining is sort of towards the end of a finished product in my head, it'll still
yeah,
grow backward. Or if it's at the
yeah,
beginning, it'll grow forward. And it doesn't,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah. But what I find really interesting is, you know, not to get like philosophical, but like it kind of reminds me of like, Taoism and this idea of, the effortless action and the idea
mhm,
of like just allowing things to kind of come to you and then making movements that are that require the least amount of energy for them to be
yeah,
sort of successful and to make you feel like you're in the moment and creating the thing as it's happening. And it
yeah,
sounds like you're sort of talking about this in like a it's just very familiar to the experience of writing these kinds of stories and to
yeah.
working them out in some way.
Definitely.
Where the yeah,
I was just gonna say, yeah, definitely all the ones that have in the long run turned out to be really popular were definitely the ones that I were not like belabored. They were the ones that like I had an image and then it just kind of like worked itself out from there in a way that I can't really parse.
Mhm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
you're just sort of creating a representation of the thing
Yeah.
that haunts you in your own brain, and then you're like, I don't know if anyone else is going to feel this way. And it turns out that like most people's brains are about like
Yeah.
75% the same, so
Yeah.
you're probably going to find someone.
And I'll do something and I think, I try and be like the extent of it like, this seems cool to me. We'll see if anyone else likes it. I'll try and keep it like not really hinging on, becoming popular because most of the stuff that I've done that's become popular, it wasn't until like 3 years after the fact. Like I did
Really?
Sirenhead in 2019 and then it didn't get like properly popular until April of 2021, I
Oh
think.
wow.
Do you know
And
what
Really?
happened?
yeah, I know exactly what happened. It was really weird. It was right after my birthday in April, and I'd done the character a bunch of times in a bunch of drawings with like flavor text and whatnot, like I do. And it had been popular. Like people like this was good. This is a good design and everything, but nothing had really come of it. And I'd moved. I was at a time in my life where I was working retail, and I would come home from working at a bookstore until like 10 o'clock and want to do some art, but I didn't really. I was exhausted, and it was late at night, so I didn't really want to do the whole background, and I was
Mhm.
basically I was lazy and tired. So I decided to, do the thing with the photos where people, and it became like an interactive thing. People would send in a photo of their spooky driveway, and then I would get the exercise in each day of doing like two or three of these monsters. And it became like a thing where it was just like a test of trying to, figure out how to do shadows the best, how to do lighting the best, how to match color the best, and also just kind of spur of the moment creature design where like I wouldn't think too much about what was going to be there until I was actually drawing it right on the photo. And then at the end, being like, oh, I'm going to use this photo as if it's from somebody else to kind of come up with a story and then put it all together. Um, so at that time, I did Sirenhead, like I said, a couple times, and it was popular, but I moved on and did other stuff. And then a couple months afterwards, a mutual online was like, oh, this character's cool. Can I do like a little game demo, which is like a very simple level where you're like a camp counselor like going along a path in the woods and you encounter Sirenhead. And I was like, sure, of course, yeah, just credit my name and whatever. And it was great. It's really fun. It's like the first Sirenhead thing. And then years went by, and then in April of I think 2020 or 2021, um, two things happened within like 2 days of each other, and that was that the YouTuber Markiplier
Oh
uh,
yeah.
found that game and played it, And like the next day, an animator on TikTok, whose name escapes me, unfortunately, made a video, probably from the game, of a giant siren head over like a city, with like sirens going off and people shooting it. And those two things happening at the same time, like made him go viral on TikTok and YouTube and everywhere. And then it like it exploded from there. It was absolutely just those two or three things. Like then a bunch of other game YouTubers started playing Sirenhead games, and then more
People
people
making
started.
unlicensed plushies
Oh
and
yeah, those plushies. Oh,
yeah.
I'm waiting till I can find one in Toronto, like in a store, like for it to go full circle back to me of like the bootleg
Uh-huh.
plush. But they're like everywhere. They are unstoppable, undefeatable. At this point. Yeah, it's really weird. But yeah, that was the two things I think that did that, and I've had similar success with things going viral and becoming weirdly popular, but not as much as Sirenhead did, and I think it was because of those things.
So in this period where you're just drawing three monsters a night
Yeah,
into photographs, how do you stop from hitting the same beats over and over again, or do you lean into those beats and try and explore them more deeply? How do you
yeah.
keep them getting stale?
Well, unfortunately, I think that it could be argued that I just did lean into them, and a lot of my designs are very similar. I think the ones that are successful and the ones people remember and then kind of catch on are the ones that move away a little bit from those, in some ways. But for every one that was really popular, there were like, five or six that I did that are just okay popular because they're kind of the same guy over and over again a lot. And I think just the sheer quantity of grinding those out when I was doing
Mhm.
like three or four a night for probably 2 or 3 years, it helped me just burn through kind of bad ones, I
Uh-huh.
guess.
The sort of
And
first thought.
first thought, yeah, there's only a few that I never put online. So it's all out there, and a lot of them are quite. You can tell I'm not very good at them. Especially the 2019 ones that I think are mostly just on Instagram. They might be the only place where they're officially from me still online. But I think that just burning through them like sketches helped, by design, kind of as a brainstorming process for the monsters and designs that were more successful. Like I don't think there's a Siren Head without like the 30 or 40 kind of crappy ones I did.
So do you have we've talked about how creating a bunch of great monsters
Yeah.
has given you a sense of what good monster design is. What do you think is bad monster design?
Um,
Teeth and claws and stuff, obvious stuff. But is there like a philosophy of bad monster design in the same way as you have a philosophy of good monster design?
yeah, there's a
And
couple
I want you
things.
to name names here. Give me some examples in the culture of what you think are bad monster designs.
Uh,
Burn some bridges. Let's get into it.
well, I think that I'm as guilty as anybody is perpetrating certain designs that'll start popping up. Like, there's a lot of really skinny, emaciated dudes in movies and stuff now, and I
Mhm.
I think that might be a little bit to do with Sirenhead. I don't know, I could be
Uh-huh.
wrong, but it's there's a bunch of them that there are certain monsters that I will just have qualities that I don't like. Like you mentioned, like sharp teeth and stuff. That can work. There are exceptions to prove the rule, but like anything that really points definitively to the intention of a monster, and usually it's the intention is it's gonna kill and eat you. It's gonna be as scary as a lion, which is scary, but like it's not really iconic to me as a monster. Whenever you see a monster that has like, I think Del Toro's actually talked about this before, that there should never be a monster design where the angry expression or the hostile expression is baked into it, because then you lose all kinds of depth and expression, especially when you have someone in prosthetics playing it. So whenever you see a monster with those brows, like the angry brows,
Mhm.
it sucks. Like you've just limited yourself so much by giving it like a permanent angry expression. I find that so unfortunate. But my big personal one is that, and this is not a knock on the original design. The original design is great. It's for, the waves out in the culture afterwards was the monster from Cloverfield.
Okay.
Mm.
Which was a great monster design. It's just that because that monster design was so cool, every single goddamn science fiction and fantasy and horror movie with a monster for the next like 20 years just had more Cloverfields in it. They were all like the monsters in my God, the movie where they can't talk because of the monsters. You know, it's
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And A Quiet Place.
a Quiet Place. Those
Yeah,
are just Cloverfields. Those are Cloverfields again. There's a million Cloverfields. They're like these skinny, emaciated dudes, but with the big backwards arms, like a
yeah.
bat, and then like a weird, slightly weird head. Which I've just kind of described Sirenhead. So what can
But that's
I
the
mean,
yeah. And, like, sorry, I just wanted to point out the thing about the
yeah,
little extra like extra Cloverfields. It actually
yeah,
reminds me of a movie that did it quite well, which is
yeah.
Shin Godzilla.
Oh yeah,
Where
absolutely.
you only find out at the end when they've averted disaster,
Yeah,
uh, not to spoil the film, but
yeah.
and there's that one moment, that one like series of shots, and it's like, oh God, like that was a close
Those
one.
guys are cool though. I really like
Yeah,
those humanoids, and especially like they get away with so much just by having them be in that one kind of monumental image at the very end. You don't have to see them like scampering around and maybe looking ridiculous in a bad way. You
yeah,
just get that silent, horrible, doom-filled image. It's one of the best endings
it is. It's
ever.
amazing. It's so
And
good.
and it helps that all the designs of the actual Godzilla in that film are just like so weird. There's a perfect one for a design has to be at least a little bit stupid or silly or ludicrous looking. The first form of Godzilla in that,
Yeah,
those big chicken eyes.
it's a baby.
Uh, it's a baby, yeah, and if it had an angry expression or it looked like more like a fearsome dinosaur or whatever, all the directions they could have done for that first form of Godzilla, it wouldn't have been you wouldn't it wouldn't stick in your memory. It wouldn't have the impact it does. But because it's this weird, like frail looking but still gigantic thing that's bleeding out of its gills and has these big weird chicken eyes, like no one's gonna forget that design.
No, it's
That
amazing.
the first shot when it's running down the street and you first see it over top of the whole crowd is it's incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm thinking now about how like lions are very dangerous, but hippopotamuses are much more dangerous.
yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
yeah. And
Or think
they
about how
look
even in like
silly, hippopotamus.
yeah, or like how in even in prehistoric planet they've got like the T-Rexes, they've got this big like thick and chunky bodies.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
way cooler. It's
it
way
is. It is, yeah, absolutely. When they have weird like hair on them and they don't look streamlined or designed to be cool and scary, then they end up being they have more character and it ends up working in their favor for being scarier for me.
I was gonna
so
say
emaciated.
hyenas.
Oh, hyenas.
Hyenas
Yeah,
are, and I feel maybe the most terrifying animal, like
Mhm.
up close. I think if you are near a hyena, like I don't know, I think I've
Things have
seen
gone
them.
very wrong.
I think I think I saw it maybe I saw them one time at the zoo, and that is the most scared that I've been near an animal is
yeah,
because they've got like they to your point about like emaciated, like hyenas are emaciated by design. It looks like they've got weird. They all look mangy. They've got like tufts of hair. Their
yeah,
jaws look malformed and like, and they're built to chew bone. That's why they look like that. But they
yeah,
don't look like that's been done intentionally. It looks like someone's jerry rigged like a dog to a lion to
yeah.
a Tasmanian devil, and they're like, that's an animal, and then they threw it out into the world, and now it just fucking kills things.
And they put like a chimpanzee brain in there. They put a
Yeah,
Yeah,
super smart brain in there.
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, and the fact that they do that weird giggle
Yeah,
too.
they let
Yeah.
and then they let it laugh. They were
They let
like,
it laugh at
"Yeah,
you.
let's give it a sense of humor about
Yeah,
all this horrible shit that we've crammed inside this
I think
180-pound body."
I think that in our brains we have like a specific little synapse that gets tripped whenever we see something that looks like it's starving to death or dying, even when
Yeah.
it's healthy, and that's like a specifically something that really weirds me out in a way. So yeah,
Just
that pops up a lot.
maybe it's even evolutionary. Maybe it's just, you see something that looks like it's starving to death or dying from disease, and you're like, I don't want to get sick. Keep that
Yep,
thing away from me.
exactly. Yeah, I think so. Something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
So skinny emaciated dudes they're like sour beers, they're played out. We've
A
had
little
it,
bit.
we've done it. What's the next thing?
Oh God, I don't know.
What's
I
the
mean,
Italian Pilsner of monsters?
I hope to find that out. Honestly, that sounds delicious and refreshing. But right now, I seeing a lot of that, so I want to try not to do that myself, even though it's something I have to force my hand back from because it's what I find weird and creepy.
Mhm.
so it's hard.
Have you ever considered making a monster with a dad bod?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely playing with different forms and shapes is good. I also don't want to go too far though, because there's a lot of, I never like seeing like fatness portrayed as
Yeah.
inherently monstrous. That's something I
Mhm.
really actively try and avoid. And yeah, so
No,
a happy middle ground.
I'm saying Sirenhead, but he's he's had a beer a night for 10 years. He's
Yeah,
wearing a Packers jersey. Uh,
there's
he's
some
talking
uh
about beating the spread.
there's some thick fan art of Sirenhead you could probably find if
Wait,
you
Thick
dig
siren head.
you dig into the internet a little bit further.
The
I mean, on the
big
subject,
firm thighs.
Yeah.
Siren head.
Oh my God.
Sirenhead.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. I wanted to say one other thing because you mentioned that you created Sirenhead in 2019, and then we were talking about how you wanted your art to feel like it existed for like a long period of time, like that this is stuff that's been around. I gotta say, I thought that was like 2012. I like, and
Oh,
I'm
really?
usually good with dates. Oh yeah, I was sitting there. I'm sitting there, and you're like, 2019. What the fuck is he talking about? This guy
Yeah.
doesn't know when he
Because I
made his own
definitely
art.
remember seeing Siren Head in 2012.
Yeah, I was at a
Oh.
party at a university.
Well, it's
No, but
definitely part of that tradition of like it's definitely in the long line of very kind of retro creepypasta like Slender Man, obviously, that kind
yeah,
of thing. So part of that's by design for sure.
but I think that that's like a on the subject of how you create these things. I think the creating something that feels kind of timeless to to an extent, obviously,
Yeah.
like but it feels like Siren Head could be from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Like
Yeah.
it's not tethered to any specific time or place. And I think that there's something really cool. The way that you were able to do this was by essentially, in a way, giving up your authorship.
Yeah.
Like you're the man behind the curtain. People don't, you're not going out of your way to directly associate yourself with it. Like someone will make a Siren
Yeah.
Head game, it's based off your design, but you're not the one making the game, for
No,
example.
yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
no. That was definitely part of that was part of the initial like design choice of like kind of letting it go.
mhm,
And that eventually got taken out of my hands completely, where it would just when it goes viral, when something goes viral on the internet, it's gone. It's out of the
mhm.
gate. The barn doors are open, as it were. But that was definitely part of the process in the early part when I was making the character and also, working with that medium and just trying to get some of that spooky, like early, like you said, early 2000s to 2012 creepypasta going. It's part and parcel with it, I think.
So I want to go back a little bit to what you were talking about earlier about you create monsters and then afterward you sort of figure out what they're about, or
Yeah.
have you've never gone the other direction? You've never had a concept for what a monster is about and then drawn it from there?
Well, usually I'll have like you mentioned earlier, the spark of like an
Mhm.
idea, like, and then
That image that.
the image of some characteristic or something I'd like to see done, and then I'll paint it and then do the rest. But I've never had a fully formed character with a backstory and all that. Even like, at this point with a lot of the characters, they'll have anywhere from no backstory at all, just wanted to kind of see what it would look like in that environment, to the barest framework, all the way up to like, things that I could think I could fill out and have ideas for. Like I have an idea for a Siren Head story with characters and what that would look like, and a few other ones. But it's a whole range in between, and I've never started with the fully thought out one and
Mhm.
then done the character for it. That's not happened. That sounds um good. That sounds nice. I wish I had that a story first. That's the hard part for me. I'm good at doing characters, I think, that look pretty interesting. It's just like getting the world that they live in and the characters that would interact with them and what would happen in a three act structure, say,
Mhm.
is harder. That's
Yeah.
after the fact. Yeah.
Well, I was really interested because when I was doing research for this interview, I was going through. You've got there's a whole Trevor Henderson wiki with just like
Sure
dozens
is.
and dozens and dozens of monsters, and all of them have
Yeah.
this like huge, mythos around them. And then Mayfair Watchers Society is
Yes.
obviously doing that. Like these things sort of like it reminded me a lot of I did a medieval studies major. That reminded me sort of like the medieval bestiary as this like kind of text that has
Yeah,
existed for like all the way going back to ancient Greece. And the thing that sort of unites that type of text as a genre is that all of the like examples of different monsters and creatures that exist in the world are sort of like metaphors and moral lessons.
Mhm.
And
yeah,
like in the medieval bestiary, it's like every single story, every single monster in here is like a little like life example of like a religious teaching. And I just
yeah,
think it's really interesting how like these texts, this sort of meta text that you've created is kind of the opposite of that. It's this sort of like bestiary of the internet where
yeah,
it's not rooted in any sort of like divine truth, but in like this empty cosmic horror.
yeah.
And I just wonder like the bestiary is about sort of teaching a kind of moral lesson, and I wonder if there's something you want your audience to understand about the world from the monsters that you've created and put together.
Yeah, yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, I agree that there's definitely they're not supposed to be lessons or moral lessons or anything like that. That would be an interesting exercise though. Um, but I definitely want to, I guess that I want to kind of show maybe a fresh way looking at spaces in the world that you
Mm-hmm.
might not think about. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a certain um uncanniness to things like spaces that we don't even see anymore because it might be on your like daily commute or whatnot, like
Mhm.
and I won't say liminal because liminal's so overused and doesn't really even mean anything anymore at this point. But just, common spaces that everybody sees and nobody really sees because you're just kind of going about your day. And I just want to draw attention to that with these uncanny creatures and just kind of tied into like what you brought up way earlier about like that fear of the dark you had when you were a kid and that fear of being alone and like very rooted in childhood kind of like fears and anxieties and then kind of tying that into the modern day, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I mean, I think something that's really interesting. I'm not going to tell you your business, but
No,
something
no.
that I noticed while while looking at
I
your
will. Your business is good.
Oh, thank you.
now I can't say that, so okay, fine. But what I noticed looking through your designs, something that I noticed that you return to often
Mm,
is the idea of the past as something that is full of sort of unknowable horror, I guess. And
yeah,
this goes not just with you have Cartoon Cat, which was quite popular, which
yeah.
is sort of your Felix the cat. I would say, if I'm not
No, you're
mistaken.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And but then not just that, but also the singing clergymen, which we were just talking about, the Sisterhood of is it the Sisterhood of the Ever Sharpening Blade?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, that's right.
also Victorian era style there. But
Yeah.
beyond that, Sirenhead itself has that is not a modern siren. That is a 60s, 50s siren.
Yeah,
That is
you're
the kind of
right.
siren that you would see in your high school. That was like Alexander and I, we went to the same high school and and it was built in 1918. And a lot of the facilities hadn't been updated in decades because, well, you could say it's because they still work or because there's not enough funding for public schools, but
Yeah.
go vote in the Toronto election, by the way.
Go vote.
And but yeah, like it's just this continuous sort of return to the past as a source of horror, not necessarily a source of malignant or something that's actively trying to kill you or injure you, but as a source of spooks, I guess is a better
Yeah.
way of putting it, scares.
Just like the when you're a kid and everything feels so much bigger and more fraught with peril maybe and just like not regular peril but unknowable peril. That's really interesting, and I think a large part of that is just I'm 37. I grew up in the 90s, so a lot of that is just almost unconsciously like my point of reference for certain things. And I'm sure it's also tied into you get the modern ARGs with analog horror. And that's
Mm-hmm.
all, that's definitely a vibe that I am at least a little bit partial to for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess that kind of just snowballs together into um, being kind of a reference point for a lot of my work. Yeah.
I think there's also something to the idea that the past is uh uncanny because it's like half a step or 1.5 steps removed from our experiences in the present, which means that
Yeah,
there's different slang, different terminology is used. Like when was just as an example, when was the last time you used the word clergyman? I
yeah, I
like
guess
you
so.
just like don't you I like I in everyday life I know what it means,
Yeah,
but I think that might be when I said it out loud to you 5 minutes ago. That might have been the first time I've ever said that word,
you know,
and I
a
didn't
lot.
like it.
Yeah, a lot of that is like completely unconscious on my part. But I guess it is trying to root a lot of this in the past. Like I could have easily called that thing the singing priest,
Hmm.
um, but also doesn't sound as spooky. It sounds way spookier if you say the singing clergyman. So that might be
Clergyman.
might be part of it as well. But I
Hmm.
definitely like that archaic vibe is definitely something that pops up a lot, and it is intentional in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
So it seems from your online presence that your response to these creatures is one of delight.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
like you love these guys. Like, do they still scare you?
Oh no, I don't think any of the things I've drawn have ever really scared me, except for maybe like one or two kind
Was
of
there any
one
point
offs.
that they scared you in the process? Is it just when they once they became familiar, they stopped being scary, or were they always just products of love?
I think it's just, being the one who drew them all, it's really hard to be scared or find them even uncanny because it's all me just focusing on, rendering and light and tone and stuff.
Mhm.
They definitely all incorporate different aspects of stuff that I find really scary in other things and, in the real world. But not them specifically. I guess, it's really hard to find them scary. They're all my characters.
Mhm.
Is Here's a question though. Have you
Yeah.
ever been online, in one of the horror spaces that you frequent, and someone sent you an image and you were like, "Oh, like you got spooked by an image." And
Yeah.
then you realized, "Oh, wait a second, that's their interpretation of one of my characters." Like, have you
I,
ever been spooked by someone else drawing not necessarily Sirenhead, but anything?
mm, I don't think so. I think the recognition goes before anything else. I
Interesting.
definitely appreciate fan art. Like, there's been some incredible fan art. But no, I think that I'm like, oh, that's one of my characters first before I can even get scared or startled even.
Can I make a
So what does
request for
scare you?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, the number one thing that scares me, besides all the normal boring shit like,
Mhm.
failing and
Global warming.
global warming, all that stuff,
Bees.
is bees, yeah, being mediocre, all that. The kind of like legit scary thing that gets me is whenever it pops up in a horror novel, something is hostile architecture
Hmm.
really gets me. Like House of Leaves, like you're in a
Mm.
building and the
Mhm.
building's changing around you and the building hates you and knows you're there. That stuff bothers me so much. Like, and stuff, and besides that, whenever there's a fate, like way worse than death, where someone's like trapped forever in infinity, like those kinds of concepts always really bother me a lot.
Mm.
There's a really good movie called Occult by Koji Shirashi, which you can
Mm.
watch on YouTube for free.
Hmm.
That has a concept towards the end that I won't spoil, where someone, well, I won't spoil it, but it involves the concept of infinity. And it's very frightening to me.
Have you seen the short film Curve on
Uh,
YouTube?
I love Curve.
It's
Curve
one
is
of the
so
best.
scary.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
so fucking good.
I made a list of short films. I made like a post on Twitter, I think like a year ago, and just being like, here are my 4 or 5 top favorite
Yeah.
short horror films. And then I realized after that they were all about like scary buildings that hate you and want you to die, or weird pits that are alive, or just different architecture and structure related scares.
It's
For
really
people
interesting that
who,
that's
oh,
not the work that you do. It's
yeah,
really
that's
interesting
really
that you stay away
fascinating.
from that.
Yeah, I've flirted with that a little bit once or twice, but I really should because I think that would be really weird
Mhm.
and cool. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, but I mean, that's the funny thing is actually you do that. You just do it in your own way because, as you pointed out, like one of the key aspects of your art is that it's photos of places
Yeah.
that
Mm-hmm.
have then been made scary. But it would be really cool for you to like, I don't know, make a
No monster, just like
no,
the environment.
or like a building in the middle of the desert or something. Like
Here,
something.
I did one. Let me see if I can find it and drop in here. But it's like
Okay.
it's one of the few examples of this, and it's a building, just a weird grassy plain with a building, and the building is like duplicating itself. It's like it's called architectural mitosis, where the building is like
Mm.
dividing and growing in this
I love
weird
that.
cancerous malignant way. Yeah.
We got a Henderson exclusive.
Oh, I posted it a while ago, I
Damn
think.
it.
Yeah, sorry, not an exclusive.
Damn it.
But I'll let me see if I can find it. You can go on. I don't want to hold everybody
Okay,
up.
sure.
Sorry.
I am now. I'm curious if you listened to the second last episode in our most like the season of Wrong Station that just ended because it's all about
Ooh,
a
no, not yet.
building. It's about a skyscraper, or it's about the building of a skyscraper. I won't give it much away, but similar sort of pseudo.
Ooh.
I'm gonna look at this. Let's look at
I
this
love
EP.
this. This is exactly the kind of
Ooh.
sensible mid-range urban development that is illegal in many places in America.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
this
mostly
is
it's my fear of condos and condo development rubbing out every interesting or individual thing in a city.
vote for Olivia Chow.
Vote for Olivia Chow.
You
No, I
get,
haven't listened to that yet. That sounds totally my shit, though. I got to get on that.
yeah, no rush. I was just curious if you had thoughts about it. But yeah, and
Nice.
that's a great building,
Yeah,
and a
it's
great
the
piece of horror art.
original. Thank you. The original. It was just the first floor of it is the only
Mm.
actual thing. Everything else is just built up on it
Oh,
through
very cool.
Photoshop. Yeah.
All right, well let's move on now to talking about a real monster. This
Ooh.
this industry, this industry
Chum.
of trying to make a living in the arts on the internet. Uh,
Yeah,
the kind of work you're doing is, creating monsters online for millions of people isn't something that existed
I'm
15
baffled.
years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, where do you see things going in the future both in terms of your personal career and also in, the field, the
Well,
industry?
first
That's right.
off, let me just say that I'm just absolutely, I do not take it for granted that I can draw monsters and people like them, and it's enough that, people hire me to do commission work and I can live off of it. That's
Mhm.
incredible. I just hope that for my future, I hope that I can keep paying my rent with monsters.
A
Is
true Toronto answer.
that would be amazing. I just don't want this to collapse. That's my
Yeah.
goal. But I would love to work on certain IPs. Like if they ever bring back Channel Zero, I'd love to be involved in
Mm.
Channel Zero,
Mhm.
Creep Show, anything like that. As for a broader like where things are going, I think that um, a big thing with modern horror right now, and that I'm really excited about, is uh, the kind of greater horror industry embracing analog horror in a lot of
Mhm.
really interesting ways, especially with a bunch of younger generations. Like Skinamarink just came
Yep.
out, and just your thoughts on the film aside, completely, the fact that that got such an interesting response, such a huge
Mm.
response, and became a really popular in theaters film when it was like basically an incredibly scary to me art film
Mhm.
Yeah.
is very heartening. I think that people are hungry for something that's different, and I think that's kind of the direction a lot of horror is going to go. That The Outwaters just came out, similar kind of approach. We're all going to the World's Fair. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
These are all on my list. They're hard to
Yeah.
access once they're out of theaters is the issue.
Yeah, yeah. They're all, I think, part of the analog horror kind of aesthetic and ideals of internet online horror, kind of evolving into different spaces, I guess. I mean, even with the Backrooms, there's an incredible series of YouTube videos with God, the name of the creator is escaping me at the moment. I'm terrible for that. But he just got hired to do, or he just is getting the opportunity to do a full length movie for A24 off of the Backrooms concept based on his shorts, and the shorts are incredible. And he's 16, like, and
Oh
he's
my
Wow.
doing it.
God.
He's filming it on his summer break right now,
I
which
don't
is
like
just.
that.
I like that. I think that's cool.
No,
Like,
I just don't like that there's someone who's 16 who's
oh
doing
no,
the
yeah,
age
no,
before that. No,
it's
I'm
terrifying.
twice that age. Give me the thing.
I'm 37 and this guy's like 16 and he's like kicking my ass at it, honestly. But I just think, yeah, it's cool that a younger generation who grew up on the internet and have this whole set of very specific anxieties and worries and weird impulses fostered by being a kid on the internet is now getting the opportunity to do these really strange horror, new weird films. And I think that especially with the response to something like Skinamarink, it's going to just kind of snowball a little bit, and that'll be the next weird direction it goes in, I guess.
I'm reminded of Ted Chiang made a short story that I think was in the
Yeah,
collection that's now called Arrival, but it had a different name and I can't remember the other name. But in
yeah,
that collection, he has this short story about parents of kids who they can basically opt into giving these kids brain chips
yeah,
that speed up their brain development and allow them to do like new math and new language. But by doing this, they're also basically condemning themselves to no longer being able to communicate with their children.
right.
And I think about that when you're talking about analog horror and kids who grew up firmly online with a like with surrounded by the very fully developed Web 2.0 social media situation,
Yeah,
and just how different that was from my experience growing up. And like I grew up, and by the time I was 10, internet was a fixture like in my
yeah,
house, but it was not yet the Web 2.0 that like these 16, 17, 18 year olds are growing up with.
yeah,
And just like what you said about like their concerns and fears being so different from what my experience was, which was like fucking Angel Fire and
yeah,
Geocities websites, and like one time getting completely incorrect information for a project I was doing for school because I didn't know the page I was reading was satire. Like
yeah,
that was like the worst thing that happened to me. And now it's like a completely different experience,
yeah.
and one that I can't fully communicate with. And it's like, first of all, how do you make horror for that audience? Second of all, how do you consume horror made by that audience as someone who didn't grow up like that?
Yeah, yeah. And like, what are the brains of creatives that have had that terminal level of online for the last like 30 years gonna look like? What's that gonna be like? It's gonna
Yeah.
be weird and scary, and I want to watch it.
I got a Hieronymus Bosch painting going on up here. It's
Yeah,
not it's
yeah.
not good.
I got like a donkey sitting under a tree in my brain, and they got
Yeah.
yeah, whole other thing.
Yeah. My brain is like the Saturn devouring his son,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
but he's eating also my brain. It's a brain eating another brain up there.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're getting close to our time here. So thanks so much for sitting down with us and chatting with us, Trevor. It
Yeah.
was an absolute delight. It's so rare to have a conversation with someone with Jacob, and every time Jacob mentions like a thing that he's seen, they've been like, "Oh my God, I know what that is."
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there
Cool.
anything that you would like to plug before we head
Yes,
out?
Oh,
please.
yeah, I guess the most prominent thing is that I wrote a kids horror book for middle grade audiences with Scholastic called
Perfect.
called Scare Waves, and it comes out October 3rd, so fairly soon.
October 3rd.
Yeah, I did the cover, I wrote the whole thing, and it's got 26 interior illustrations in black and white. It's very much like a Fear Street slash Stephen King's It for middle
Mhm.
grade audiences, but with just like chock a block full of monsters. There's like 8 to 9 different really weird monsters in there, and I think kids will enjoy it.
I
Oh,
love that.
that's really exciting. I'm sure I will enjoy it. I'm really
I hope
excited
so.
to get myself a copy.
I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy it.
Would you like to plug any monsters that live in anyone's house? Or just
You know, I don't want to ruin the surprise. They'll
mm,
make themselves known fairly soon. So just, hold tight and stay vigilant.
yeah, don't check under your bed, don't check your closet. They will come to you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Trevor Henderson. Find him everywhere online at Slimy Swamp Ghost.
I'm all over the place. It's a
All over the
problem.
place.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
It is a
lot.
problem.
But
Yeah,
always
glad you
as
recognize it.
at Slimy Swamp Ghost. Yeah.
It's like it's so a slimy swamp ghost on most stuff, but I am Trevor Henderson, all one word on Instagram, and that's the best place to find all my art without like a bunch of bullshit recommendations and stuff in between. So
Perfect. All
yeah.
right. Thanks
Cool.
very much, everyone. And
Bye.
as we always say, thank you for listening.
Bye.